Hello Internet, Yuka here. Today I wanted to talk to you about how I became a game developer. And this might be interesting, or it might be the most boring subject of them all. And let me just change the camera here. There we go. I've been playing video games for my entire life, just like everyone else, and I'm not the unique little flower that I kind of want to be. Um, my parents, or rather my mom and her dude, want they owned a toy store, and the toy store, in the toy store they sold video games. It was a really small store, so they had a lot of the games back home as an extra storage thing. And I was at home, and we had an NES at home. So I pretty much had all the games that I could ever want, and I kind of found that, well, video games are super fun, and it's just the best thing ever. A couple of years later, I started using Click and Play, and it's kind of like old Game Maker. And by the time I used Click and Play, I didn't know what variables was. So if you're a programmer or a developer and you know what variable is, try making a game without using any variables. I dare you. So you had variables in the game for player health and player score, and that was for 4 players. So you had 8 variables to use by default, and I only knew how to use them and not create my own variables. So the games that I could make was kind of limited, and when I found out that you had to learn more to make more advanced games, I kind of got bored and stopped using Click and Play, and I kind of regret that. When I got a bit older, I had to go by bus to get to school, and my story usually starts with, I'm a game developer today because my school bus was full. Yeah. So the school bus was full, and you had very limited space if you wanted to sit for, well, 40 minutes to get to school. So I usually sat by the same place as one other dude. So he was always sitting alone, and that was a perfect place to sit. I didn't know him, and a couple of years later, he was one of my best friends, and he was interested in animation. So I was grabbing that interest as well. So I started with art school and stuff like that. And one day he was telling me that, hey, well, we're going to this university to see if game development is any fun, and we want to do game art. And I was like, well, sure. I draw and make digital paintings and stuff all the time, so I might as well join. So when I got there, I talked to some guys, and I'm super thankful that I found those guys, because they asked me like, oh, okay, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to do this and this and this and this. Okay, then art is not for you. You're talking about game design. It's like, game what? And when I got back home to my school, it was 2 months away from graduating from that school. And in order to apply to the game design course, I had to know, like, I had to have grades in a subject that I hadn't studied at all. So that was math, and a third class of math, and I only studied the second part. So I went into the principal's office and told her that, well, I need to know math, like the third course in math. I need that by summer. And she was pretty much laughing and said, well, that's not going to happen. It's impossible. You can't do it. And it's like, well, I'm getting into the school. Like, that's a fact. I'm going to get into the school, and I need this course done by the time I'm done on this school. So make it happen, because I need this. I am going to do this. So she helped me find a math teacher, and I dropped a couple of classes that I didn't want to attend because I need more time to do the math thing. And I also studied super hard during like recess and stuff like that. So when all my friends had fun and well, just having a great time, I was sitting in the hallway studying math because I really wanted to do this because this was the future. It's always been there. It's like, well, I finally found it. Like I need this, and I completed the course. I got good grades and I got in. And when I got there, I realized that the class was pretty much split into two halves. So we had one half that attended class, and when they were done with class, they made the minimum amount of homework that had to be done to like continue the course. And then we had the other group that was like, okay, so you had to study by yourself in your own spare time to become good. The second group that I was talking about, they spent all their free time studying, even though they didn't have to for the school. They studied for themselves. So they grouped up, started projects, and some of them created their own companies. And one of the companies is super successful today, and you probably heard about them, and you probably played their games because, well, they are the Goat Simulator guys. And the guy on the bus that I was talking about, the reason I got into game development at all, he's working there. So he's one of the founders. I joined the second group of guys. Like, instead of just studying like the bare minimum, I really wanted to know game design, and I found out that, well, it's super easy. You just come up with another game idea and then you're done. So, and then I wanted to start programming because when we had a project, it was super obvious that as a game designer, we were 5 game designers in our group. I think we were like 12 people in total, and 5 of them were game designers. And there's kind of enough work for one game designer. So, yep. And the other game designers spent their time watching YouTube. And I didn't want to do that because I kind of went there to learn more about this stuff. So I started programming in GameMaker. And I found out that, well, if I only knew what this thing called a variable was when I was using click and play, I would be like a fucking master on game programming by now. And I continued studying hard. I mean, I played a lot of video games. I drank a lot of beer, and I had a really good time. But I studied hard, and I really made sure that I'm one of the guys you want to contact if you want someone that is really good in your project. So a couple of years later, we assembled a team and applied for the competition Dare to Be Digital, and we got in, and that felt like a win. And from the competition, there were three winners, and the prize was to get nominated for a BAFTA, and our team won the BAFTA. But after winning that, I created my own company, and I started working with one of the team members. The company didn't make it because I didn't know enough game design. I didn't know enough programming. I didn't know enough game development business stuff. And I was still thinking that game design is pretty easy because game design is pretty much come up with an idea, get that idea into someone else's head, and have him or her make the game for you. And it's not really how it works. And I slowly started to learn this by well, making mistakes and stuff like that. So I kind of realized that game design is the hardest part, at least for me. It's super fucking hard to make a good game design, like a good game out of a game design approach. And it's super fucking hard. So the company failed, and I had to get another job. So I wanted to stay true to myself, and I didn't want to have to take a job where I couldn't do my game development stuff. And I was a pretty okay programmer, pretty okay game designer, and a pretty okay artist. Uh, Kind of mediocre artist. And I started working as a teacher, game development teacher. I was teaching game design, game programming, game art, Photoshop, and pretty much everything that had to do with games. After that, I realized that my boss was the worst human being on earth. And if you're watching this, I just want you to know that you are the worst human being on earth. Anyway, I started looking for another job. I got a job as a programmer, and we made an app for a company. And then we couldn't sustain the cash flow, so we went bankrupt. So I went consulting, like programmer consultant, and made a couple of apps for a couple of companies. And then I got into another programming job, and that was super awesome fun. And I had the time of my life, but I didn't get to make games, and I really wanted to make games. So after a couple of years, I started looking for another job, and I got a job as the statistical analyst. I was working with statistics, and that was for a brand new game company. And I slowly transitioned into a game designer, and I kind of realized that it didn't really work out for me, because I wanted to make great game design, and me and the boss, we had different views on how a game designer should work in the company. So I talked to him about quitting, and we agreed that, well, this might not be a nice fit for us. So I quit, and then I talked to my girlfriend that I just found when I moved to the north of Sweden, and we were basically talking about game development as a career choice, and we agreed that, well, why not try it? Why not try to become independent game developer for full time? And that's where I am right now. So right now I am kind of working against the clock to make a game that is a complete product that I can sell, and that can make enough money to sustain at least one more game, so that I can live out my dream as an independent game developer. So that's kind of my story. I'm a game developer because my parents owned a toy store. Still, only my mom and her dude. And I'm a game developer also because the bus was full. If there's something that I really want to take away from this video, is like, if you really want something, just fucking work for it. Because I've had a lot of people in my life that want to become something, but they don't want to chase it. The whole math thing that I mentioned, and the whole learning game design and starting to learn programming, even though it wasn't on your curriculum, even if it wasn't on your program, just work for it. Just work hard. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere. If you're just starting game development, either game programming or game design or whatever, just start. You're probably not going to make the next Minecraft from your first game, but I mean, failing is part of the process. Learning how to make a good game requires you to fail a couple of times, and I've failed a shit ton of times. And it feels bad, but it's good for you, because you're learning and you're getting better if you're willing to learn from your mistakes. And don't give up. So thank you for watching, and if you have similar story or completely different story, I would love to hear it, because I'm interested in knowing how people got into game design and game development and all that stuff. So how did you get into game development, or how are you planning to get into game development? Let me know. Thank you for watching.